my goodness, this guy, John Pesutto, the leader of the opposition, he is punishing one of his own for a supposed association with somebody who has an alleged association with somebody else. Victorian opposition leader John Pesutto moves to expel Moria Deeming. Alrighty, so it's been all over the news, ladies and gentlemen. If you live in Victoria, and if you do not know what I'm talking about, then it is very likely that you have been living under a rock. So what is this in relation to? Well, over the weekend, on Saturday to be specific, there was a pro-women's rights rally held in the city, hosted by British activist by the name of Kelly J. Keane. That's right. Several women were invited to speak. The name of the rally was Let Women Speak. And the topic was particularly in relation to, of course, transgenderism. And we've seen the emergence of things like biological males that have been admitted into female changing rooms, admitted into female sports, and women's only spaces. So as you could imagine, there are, of course, many women, I would say the majority of women, who are very concerned about this trend, concerned for their safety, concerned for children, and they are speaking out and they are showing their faces because they simply refuse to stand by saying nothing. So that is the nature of the rally taking place. But unfortunately, this cause, this very much needed cause, was indeed overshadowed by a couple of factors. That's right. So on one hand, there were at least a few hundred far left-wing activists that showed up, and they were very violent. In fact, a couple of them, I think it was 2 or 3, were actually arrested for assaulting police officers. I also heard reports that a police horse was assaulted as well from this side. But of course, the hundreds of left-wing activists showed up. They were chanting. They were very angry because I guess they don't think that women should be allowed to speak. And they're under the presumption that women who are speaking out are somehow bigots or they're not tolerant, etc. But I hardly see what's not tolerant about, for example, not wanting biological males in women's prison, because those are the types of topics that were raised at the march. Now, also, there was another group of individuals, maybe about 20 or 30 to them, wearing all black, and they were performing the Nazi salute. That's right. They appeared to be self-styled neo-Nazis. And unfortunately, the media 100% covered these people and didn't cover any of the action from the main rally, which was Let Women Speak, which is actually really sad because so many of these women had such important information to convey to the public. So we look at the events that transpired, and of course we saw the Liberal Upper House MP, Moria Deeming, conduct a speech there on the day, and subsequently, the day after, we see the Liberal Party leader, John Pesutto, announce that he is going to move a motion to expel Moira from the Liberal Party due to some type of perceived association with the organizer, and a perceived association the organizer allegedly has with people who hold Nazi views, right? Or National Socialist views. Now, it's really clutching at straws here, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to break this down and try and get to the bottom of why is John taking this path and what is the evidence that he has produced so far, which I can tell you is, well, basically there's no evidence. But before I do, I'm going to show you a couple of clips here. First is from Daniel Andrews. The second is from John. I'll be back in just a minute.
That event, and what a disgrace on the steps of our Parliament, of all places, right? That event was a nasty, hateful gathering long before anybody used the Nazi salute. Mr. Pesutto and the Liberal Party can explain why some forms of hate are okay and other forms aren't. I think all hate is wrong.
All right, now Daniel Andrews wants to talk about hateful behaviour, but let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. There is nobody in Victoria more hateful, more spiteful than the disgraced so-called Premier, Dan Andrews. Now, it's important to point out that the hateful people that Dan are talking about, right, he said that the original hateful people before the, quote, other hateful people showed up, he's referring to women who have genuine concerns about their safety, women who have genuine concerns about their children. But instead of listening to these women, and that of course is the objective of the rally, let women speak, and presumably we would all like it if people would listen to these women. Daniel Andrews has come out and said, well, no, they're hateful. And what he is seeking to do in such a toxic manner is he's seeking to conflate neo-Nazism with women's rights. Try and figure that one out. How does that exactly work in the mind of the Premier, that if somebody, a woman, wants to speak about women's rights, then they are somehow on the same page as a neo-Nazi? I mean, I would very much like to peer into the brain of Dan Andrews to see what's going on in there, but then again, maybe not. What do we have here? We've also got some remarks from the Liberal opposition leader, John Pesutto. Have a look at this.
What came to light on the weekend when seeing the awful circumstances on the steps of this parliament were that Moria Deeming, a member of the Parliamentary Liberal Party, had actively participated with and worked with the organisers of the rally. That rally was organised by people who have known and established links with people who have Nazi sympathies, promote white supremacist views and ethno-fascist views. That is odious, it is unacceptable. I will never, ever accept any member of the Parliamentary Liberal Party under my leadership ever associating with anybody who shares a platform with people who peddle hate, division and attack people for who they are.
Oh, Mr. Noble there, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? Mr. John, I have the moral high ground, Pesutto there. Now, what we see, of course, is a bit of a Dan Andrews tactic coming from the leader of the opposition there. Of course, conflating the actions of Moria Deeming there, an upper house MP, who was legitimately there to speak up for women, trying to conflate her actions with neo-Nazis, which is absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, I don't see John actually speaking out against the leftist protesters who assaulted police officers. Maybe those are the people he actually supports. But I think more importantly, what we see from John's language is effectively the presumption of guilt before innocence. Now, one of the most fundamental attributes that we have in our society is supposed to be the presumption of innocence before the presumption of guilt. But John appears to have had a knee-jerk reaction. He said, no, we're not far right. We're not associated with these people. And let me just get rid of anyone who could potentially be tied to anyone. So what my reaction was, I said, my goodness, this guy, John Pesutto, the leader of the opposition, he is punishing one of his own for a supposed association with somebody who has an alleged association with somebody else. Do you see how many really obscure dots need to be connected in order for this man's argument to hold up? So now you don't just take John's word for it, all right? Now John says that he and his team, they've done research, and supposedly this organizer, Kelly J. Keane, has been involved in a whole bunch of these, quote, neo-Nazi interactions. But the organizer of the protest herself, right, she denies those claims. So Avi caught up with her just the other day. Take a look.
So the leader of the Liberal Party, John Pesutto, is planning on expelling his MP, MOIRA, over the fact that she simply joined your protest. Now, he has conceded that she may not have even known that those Nazis were going to co-opt to hijack it, but he says that the reason why he's going forward, pushing forward with cancelling her, is because of her association to you and your association to Nazis that he named.
She's done videos with Richard Spencer, Mark Collett, Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke.
I've never met or spoken to either of those men ever. I've got no connection with those men. It's my Wikipedia. Someone's done a Wikipedia page to try and silence me, to shut me up, which I just refuse to do. And I can't even edit it. It's got like some weird lock on it, so I can't do anything about that. But to make claims based on a Wikipedia page when you're supposed to be a serious politician is preposterous. What a shameful man.
All right, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The organizer there, once again, her name is Kelly J. Keane, denying these very bold accusations thrown at her by the leader of the opposition. Now, we took a bit of a look into this. I took a bit of a look into this here at home. I did some digging around, and I could not find the references to these videos and the assertions made there by John Pesutto, and I wonder if they exist. But also, we saw on Sky News that Peter Credlin, she looked for these pieces of information as well. And, well, I can tell you that Peter Credlin at Sky News, she has access to a lot more staff and a lot more resources than your buddy Morgan on MCJ Report. She couldn't find anything. So I've got a little clip here of Peter pressing John on this particular issue in relation to the evidence of this association. Take a look.
Now, I haven't gone through her Wikipedia page myself. I've gone and looked independently. I can't find her being involved in a panel or speaking on a platform with any of these characters. I mean, I agree with you, David Duke, Michael Collette, Richard Spencer, I'd run a mile from them, but she has not, that I can see, had anything to do with them.
Well, I've annotated the material that I've now circulated to the party room. We've gone through that and cited the references for the material we've put. So I'm interested to know what Jose Parker said.
But what is it? Because I've seen that she has been interviewed by someone who years earlier has interviewed them, but she's not shared a platform with them.
There's been various protests or videos or discussion groups. There's a list of them that I've got in there, and I can't recall them off the top of my head here, but we've annotated them in the material I've put there. So I'm confident that those materials, which are available for people to look at themselves, can be supported by the references I've included in the notice. So I haven't just gone to the party room and said, hey, here's some stuff I downloaded. There's proper referencing of the material.
Yeah, but if Moria Deeming is going to be expelled from the Liberal Party because she was involved in the organisation of an event with a UK woman who was interviewed by someone, and that person interviewed someone that you and I both think is pretty reprehensible, that's like 10 degrees of separation to throw someone out of the party. Is that what it's about?
No, there's more than that. And there's a range of events or interviews, discussions that we've referenced in the material. So it's not just one. When Neil asked me about that this morning on Melbourne Radio, I was referencing just the top of that.
All right, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. John really appearing to clutch at straws there in his, I would say, pretty blatant attack there on Moira Deeming, one of the Liberal upper house MPs who I say has been doing a fine job. That's right, a fine job since elected to Parliament. And she goes out and she speaks up for women's rights. And Dan Andrews comes out and says that that's a hateful thing to do. And John comes out of the woodworks and basically says, hey, Dan, I agree with you. And don't worry, Dan, I'm on the job. I'm going to get rid of this person. So don't worry too much, Dan, because Johnny Boy's going to go get him. And that's just kind of what it appears to me on face value, because the evidence cited by John, it just seems really weak. And this guilt by having a perceived association with somebody who has an alleged association with somebody else, it makes me think that maybe, just maybe, there's more to this story and there's more that's actually not being said. And maybe it's possible that John is moving this motion for reasons outside of the declared reasons that he is putting forward to the public. So let's have a bit of a talk about that, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? So let's talk a little bit about John Pesutto. He's the opposition leader of the Liberal Party. So that's him there in a photo right there celebrating the Midsummer Pride March. So John is a very left-wing type of character, just so you know, even within the Liberal Party. Now, you hear about the factions in the Labor Party all the time, but in the Liberal Party, you've got left-wing faction, right-wing faction. You've got the Pride branch, of course, of the Liberal Party, and there's members in the Liberal Party. They do not all agree with each other. They do not all get along. They have internal fights. They sometimes seek to have certain people removed from the party. That's right. So you can have a rebellion against certain members, and it wouldn't be the first time that it's happened. So that's John right there, and you can also see David Southwick in the photo. So I'm going to wrap up my final thoughts on why this is, and I thought about this, quite a lot, because I think in life when something doesn't make sense, you really need to question what could the ulterior motives be. So in wrapping up my thoughts about this entire matter, I'm going based on the presumption that John is not being straightforward with the public, and my very, very strong view, let's call it a very strong view, is that his reason for seeking to expel Moira is outside of the declared reason that he has put forward to the public. And I state that opinion based on what I would consider to be an extremely, extremely weak argument that most definitely appears to be lacking any weight whatsoever. And I also want to point out that after the rally, Moira was speaking with some of the ladies. They did a live stream, and she expressed her disgust at the individuals that were performing the Nazi salute, and a lot of the participants in the protest, the Let Women Speak protest, they actually felt really scared of those guys. So what do we have here? First of all, I say that John Pesutto is attempting to character assassinate Moria Deeming. Now, once again, this is my opinion. I don't claim it to be absolute fact. That's right. I want you to think for yourself. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm telling you this is my opinion. So the question is, why is he attempting to assassinate the character of Moira? Alrighty, let's take a look here. Well, first of all, I mean, he's very left-wing. She's a conservative. That just sort of gets you thinking a bit, doesn't it? Number one, this motion proposed by John could have been a knee-jerk reaction. It appears that this man is so very much obsessed with optics, and it could have been that any potential link to the far right was enough for John to say, nope, knee-jerk reaction, I better take measures to get rid of this person because otherwise the Liberal Party's going to sink. Let me tell you something, John. The Liberal Party's already sinking. Have you taken a look at your numbers in Parliament recently? Have you taken a look at your donors who don't want to open up their wallets anymore? All right, so could have been a knee-jerk reaction, just, oh no, what do I do? I think this is the best thing to do. All right, we're brainstorming here, guys. So, number two, John simply wants Moira out of the party. Well, that's another option, of course, as I mentioned. John being a very left-wing sort of dude. Maybe he doesn't like conservatives. Maybe he doesn't like strong conservative women that actually stand up for important matters, such as protecting women's rights and children. Moving along here, number three, John supports the counter-protesters. Maybe he supports the socialist protesters, and he really identifies with what their cause is. Of course, a few of them assaulted police officers and had to be dragged away and were reportedly throwing all sorts of strange liquids at the Let Women Speak people. So maybe he's just on board with them. And I haven't seen John call out any of the antisocial behavior from that particular side. All right, he called out the neo-Nazis, yet fair enough, call that out. We don't want to see Nazi salutes. I don't think many people support that at all, and nor should people. But he's been very silent in regards to the other side. Number four, John received pressure from Liberal donors. Who knows? Maybe there's some there's some guys that still open their wallets and they said, John, we want these conservatives out if you still want our money. So, hey, just putting it out there. Not saying this is what happened, just saying potentially this sort of thing is happening. What do we have next? Number five, John seeking to appease Dan Andrews. That's what it seems to me. It seems like John is really singing the same tune as Daniel Andrews. And why would he? He's supposed to be the opposition. What John should have done, right, if he actually had a backbone, is he would have presumed his team member to be innocent before guilty. He would have backed his team member. And when these allegations came out, he should have come out and he said, no. Moira would never knowingly associate or seek to be associated with anyone from a Nazi ideology. How dare you accuse her of that? And Dan Andrews, how about we talk about your track record here in Victoria over the past 3 years? How about we talk about the manner that you, Mr. Premier, have acted in ways that can only be described as Nazi-esque, forcing an entire population to take a drug against their will, locking people down, beating people in the street, arresting people arbitrarily. It is you, Daniel Andrews, Mr. Premier, that needs to thoroughly examine your behaviour and whether or not your behaviour matches up with behaviour that is reminiscent of Nazi Germany. That's what he should have said. Is that really that hard, ladies and gentlemen? Is it really that hard to back your team members and to presume innocence before guilt and then return fire at the opposition, return fire at the enemy? But he's not going to do that. And that's why the Liberal Party is going down the drain. That's why they're sinking. They don't have the guts to defend their own. And I think that this move by John Pesutto is going to be the end of his leadership, because the party is very divided, and John has his little buddies, his little allies there. David Southwick, who has been the member for Caulfield since the dawn of time, and there's an upper house MP there in Southern Metro, Georgie Crozier, and they're backing him up. But it seems like to me that this John character, he's kind of reminiscent of a schoolyard bully that has decided he wants to pick on someone in the school ground. He's got his buddies together and he's cooked up a plan to get rid of someone. And unfortunately, there's a lot of Liberals that, well, they're shadow ministers, right? And they're receiving pay above the minimum pay package that a backbencher would get. So, and they're obviously hoping that at some point down the track, they might be a minister and get another pay increase. So you're going to see self-interest really rule the day when it comes to how a lot of these Liberal members vote on the motion to expel Moira from the party. It's very sad, and it really shows a lack of courage, and that's not what we need from opposition. From opposition, we need fierce fighting spirit. I believe Moira's got it. I mean, she puts herself out there. She was actually assaulted at that rally, as were many women, and I say that her calibre is probably too high for the Liberal Party. So Moira, if you're watching, Freedom Party of Victoria, I say, is a more fitting home for you. What we do at Freedom Party of Victoria is we just shoot straight between the eyes. We don't hold back, and we're not constrained by these perceived perceptions of perceptions and alleged associations with somebody that may have had an association with somebody 5 years ago who spoke to a certain character down a dark alleyway one day that maybe, just maybe, had an unsavory conversation that they shouldn't have had. All right, that's not how we operate here. And this is why the average age of members in the Liberal Party is 73, because they're not attracting new members, because there is nothing inspiring there. The Victorian public do not feel inspired by the Liberal Party leadership. Before we had Matt Guy, right? Matt Guy, who threatened to expel Renee Heath from the party before she was even elected. And these young up-and-comers, they're good. They're actually putting forward a good voice, and they're standing up for freedom, and they're speaking up on topics that matter. And what do you get from the Liberal management? No, we need to get rid of these people because we might upset Dan Andrews. That is a recipe for failure, and the Liberal Party will be destroyed if they continue to employ this tactic. All right, moving along here. Question: will John speak up for the many concerns expressed by women? Well, I don't think so. It was a great rally that took place over the weekend, and I've listened to all the women, listened to what they had to say. Very, very relevant points. I don't agree with everything, but I think it's important that, especially in a democracy, we need to hear what people have to say. And when it comes to John Pesutto from the Liberal Party, I think it's a very weak move. I think that he's concerned about the optics. Considering that he appears to be of a very left-wing nature himself, it's possible that he was just waiting for any opportunity to arise to make a move to expel Moira. I think it's kind of reminiscent of being a bully in the workplace and seeking to push his weight around. But I think ultimately it's going to backfire on him, and he's going to regret it when the cards fall, because nobody respects a leader that does not back up their own people. Is that fair enough? You've got teammates, and you need to support your team, back your team, presume that your team has done the right thing. And if your team has not done the right thing, then of course there needs to be penalties and punishment. But persecuting somebody for a suspicion, an alleged association with somebody that potentially is associated with someone else 5 years ago, spoke to this person, it's extremely weak, and it is masking the real intention for that reason, I say that John, unfortunately, he's not an honest guy. He's not being forthcoming with the real reason in relation to why he wants to get rid of MOIRA. And I think that the voting population, or at least the Liberal members out there, the Liberal voters, will lose an enormous amount of confidence in the Victorian Liberal Party. And Freedom Party of Victoria is here to welcome those people in. We will happily work with you. You're invited to branch meetings. Go to www.freedomparty.net.au, sign up, become a member today. It's free. We're not going to run off scared with our tails between our legs. We're not going to capitulate to the nonsensical, hateful demands of Dan Andrews. We'll stick a finger in the man's chest and call him out for the inept, unfit leader that he is. And unfortunately, I think this is just another nail in the coffin of the Victorian Liberal Party, and it sucks because people like MOIRA actually give hope to people who vote Liberal that maybe the party is going to be revived, and then you've got little John comes along and says, nope, let's put a stop to that. So anyway, go ahead and share this broadcast. Those are my thoughts. I think it's very weak, and what can I say? It's just another uninspiring day in the Socialist Republic of Victoria. Thank you for watching. To make sure you never miss an episode, sign up at mcjreport.com. Catch you on the next one.